Late at night, around 11:30, when the world had gone quiet and the only sound left was the low hum of the refrigerator bleeding through the walls, Daniel Foster's phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was the kind of sound that usually meant nothing. Spam, a forgotten email, some automated reminder from a life that kept moving, whether he felt part of it or not. He almost ignored it. Almost. But something tugged at him, a quiet instinct he had learned not to trust anymore. And he reached for the phone, squinting at the bright screen in the darkness of his bedroom. The message was from Eleanor, from across the street, from the elegant woman who had moved into the quiet neighborhood 3 months ago and had barely exchanged more than polite waves with him since. His heart stuttered when he saw there was a photo attached. Beneath it, only 4 words. "Do you think it's beautiful?" Daniel stared at the screen. His breath caught somewhere between his chest and his throat, because what he saw in that image would undo 5 years of carefully constructed solitude. It would force him to confront everything he thought he knew about loneliness, about second chances, and about the terrifying, vulnerable act of letting someone see the broken pieces he had hidden from the world. But to understand why that single message shattered every wall Daniel had built, you have to understand the man he had become, and the woman who would refuse to let him stay that way. Daniel Foster was 42 years old, a single father to a 16-year-old daughter named Sophie, and a man who had perfected the art of appearing completely fine while feeling hollow inside. 5 years earlier, his wife Catherine had left, not for another man, not after some explosive betrayal. She had simply looked at him one quiet morning over coffee and said she didn't love him anymore, and wasn't sure she ever really had. Those words had branded themselves into him. They replayed in his mind on sleepless nights, echoing in the empty spaces of his life. He had thrown himself into being the best father he could be, rearranging his entire career as an architect so he could work from home and never miss a moment of Sophie's life. He attended every school event. He learned how to braid hair and listen to teenage heartbreak without trying to fix it. He built a world around his daughter that was safe and steady, because if he couldn't save his marriage, he could at least save her childhood. But when the house went quiet at night, when Sophie was asleep and the lights were off, the loneliness crept in like fog. He had tried dating apps. He had endured awkward dinners with women who asked more about his house than his heart. Eventually, he decided that some people were simply meant to walk through life alone. He told himself that acceptance was maturity, that survival was enough. If you've ever made peace with a half-lived life just to stop the pain, then you understand Daniel. Eleanor Mitchell arrived on a crisp September morning, carried into Daniel's awareness by a knock on his office door, and Sophie's excited voice telling him he needed to come look. Through the window, he saw a moving truck and a woman directing movers with quiet authority. She was striking in a way that disrupted his thoughts. Tall, graceful, hair the color of deep mahogany catching the sunlight, skin pale against a burgundy sweater. She moved like someone comfortable in herself, elegant without effort. Sophie teased him about blushing. He denied it, poorly. There was no husband, no partner, just Eleanor and a fluffy white cat cradled in her arms as she carried it inside. Over the weeks, Daniel learned her habits without meaning to. Morning coffee on the porch at sunrise, long afternoons gardening, boxes of books delivered like clockwork. And according to neighborhood gossip, she was a retired art history professor who had never married. Their first real conversation came by accident, when Daniel's grill died in the middle of Sophie's birthday party. Eleanor appeared at the fence, holding a full propane tank and a smile that carried warmth instead of judgment. She joked about his creative swearing. He laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in years. That moment changed something. Their connection grew slowly. Vegetables from her garden turned into shared coffee. Texts turned into conversations. Sophie adored her because Eleanor spoke to her like a person, not a child. Daniel felt drawn to Eleanor in a way that frightened him, so he did what he always did, kept her just far enough away. He mentioned his ex-wife often, like a warning sign. Eleanor never pushed, but sometimes she looked at him with a patience that felt dangerous, as if she could see past the armor he wore so well. One evening, she asked him why he used humor like a shield. He admitted, quietly, that the last time he had trusted someone, he had been told he was never loved at all. Eleanor didn't argue. She simply told him that maybe the wrong person had failed to see his worth, and that he had been punishing himself ever since. He deflected with a joke. She let him. Winter arrived, bringing with it the anniversary of his divorce. Sophie was away at a sleepover. Daniel sat alone in the dark with whiskey and memories. That was when Eleanor texted him, teasing him for brooding. She invited him over, not to talk, just to eat cookies. He went. They spent the night on her couch, vinyl records playing softly, Eleanor telling stories about traveling through Europe, about art and history and quiet villages. He asked why she had never married. She told him about choosing a full life over a conventional one, about loneliness that came only on quiet nights. Something shifted inside him that night. Something fragile and terrifying. 3 months later, Catherine came back. She stood on his doorstep with apologies and explanations, talking about mistakes and missed family and wanting another chance. Daniel felt the old pull, the old need for validation, but something was different. He felt nothing. Still, he asked for time. He didn't tell Eleanor. When Sophie mentioned her mother's return, Eleanor withdrew. Slowly, gracefully, the way someone steps back when they believe they are about to lose something they never claimed. What Daniel didn't know was that Eleanor had begun writing him a letter. A confession she never intended to send. Until the night of the photo. The image on his phone was an oil painting, still wet, glowing under studio lights. It showed 2 houses on a quiet street. Warm light spilling from windows. 2 figures separated by distance, looking at each other across the space between. It was their story. When Eleanor asked if it was beautiful, Daniel understood she was asking if what they had was real, if it mattered. He didn't reply. He got out of bed, crossed the street barefoot in the cold, and knocked on her door. When she opened it, eyes red from crying, he told her the truth, that the painting was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, that he was terrified he had almost lost her because he didn't believe he deserved happiness, that Catherine had returned, but all he could think about was Eleanor. He told her he loved her, and for the first time in 5 years, Daniel stopped surviving and started living. The months that followed were not easy. Catherine resisted. Sophie needed time. Daniel had to relearn vulnerability. Eleanor called him out when he retreated. She loved him without armor. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the night Eleanor sent the photo, Daniel stood in her studio as she unveiled a new painting. This one showed the same two houses, but the space between them was empty. The figures stood together, light brighter than before. Daniel understood then that love doesn't erase pain, it redeems it. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that it's never too late to choose more than survival, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this exist to remind us that even in the quietest nights, one message can change everything.